Good morning, everyone. Welcome to vNext 2022. It is so good to see so many returning faces, a lot of new faces. This is awesome. I love getting up here and welcoming everybody every year. This is just, it makes it all worth it to see everyone gather together, talking. It was great talking to many of you last night as well, catching up before the event kicking off. So this is awesome. As we let everyone trickle in, a few logistical items I'm going to cover just to make sure we all know what's happening throughout the day and how things are supposed to progress. Before I get into that, I want to say a very, very, very big thank you to all the sponsors that make this event happen. As we all know, these kinds of things, they don't just materialize. People need to make it happen. They need to contribute. They need to be a part of that. So big thank you to all sponsors on the expo floor, and I would strongly encourage everyone to try to make the rounds, understand the solutions, understand the products, have conversations. There's a lot of really cool things going on out there. I'm hoping to catch a break to check out some of it myself. But thank you, sponsors, for being here, for making this happen. Means a lot to us. And then on top of that, all the rest of you, attendees, speakers, thank you for coming. Thank you for making the trip. Some of you, your companies made that possible. Others just came anyway. It is thrilling to see you come under whatever the circumstances is. So thank you for being here. Lots of things to be had. I would like to then move on to an announcement about a session that is happening later. I think it's today, the Women in Tech session. Is that today? Tomorrow, okay. There are cards at the end of the registration desk. If you want to attend that, please go grab one of those cards. There's a QR code on there. Snap that QR code, let them know you plan on being there so they can plan for that session, but that session will be happening tomorrow. Tonight is our attendee party, so it's a 2-day event, but obviously everyone's getting ready to hop on planes at the end of the second day, right? So the attendee party will be happening here on the expo floor. Food and drinks will be kind of served on the outside hallway area here, and then the expo floor is going to be open that whole time. So stick around tonight, 6 o'clock for that. Drinks, hors d'oeuvres, and then all the best company in this industry will be present, right? So please be here for that. Then right after the keynote, we are going to be having a break in the schedule until our first sessions start. That is intended to be kind of our expo floor time, catch a break time, make sure you got your sessions squared away, use the Just Attend app to piece together your sessions. If you have not yet set up the Just Attend app or are not using it for your sessions, another strong recommendation, everything is in there. Check that out for the schedules as it comes throughout the day. But Expo Floor will be officially open. I thought it was awesome. I already saw lots of conversations happening before we came in here. But it'll be officially open right after the keynote. So hang around for that. And then I think our first sessions are 11 a.m. is when they kick off. So, all right. Every year I come up, and I always leave something out when I'm doing the announcements. So I'm using a cheat sheet this year. That's the way it is. There's also a LinkedIn photo booth, kind of over near where the escalators are, right in that main hallway area as you're heading back to the other two session rooms. So if you need to update that profile picture, many of us have pre-COVID profile pictures, right? Because we just haven't been getting out and about. So if you're ready to update the profile picture, please hit the LinkedIn booth in that little hallway. Also, if you didn't notice it on the way in, there is a coffee cart with phenomenal coffee options. I'm on my second cup. I'm hoping it's helping, but get your coffee break over there. And then, yeah, I think that about gets me to the end of this here. Of course, if you need anything during the event, any questions come up, you run into a problem, the 4 organizers, myself, Adam Ball, Pat Richard, and Jonathan McKinney, we're all in the blue CVN shirts. So find one of us, we can help, or find out how to help. We'll figure out whatever the issue is. And the registration desk should have one of us present most of the conference. So if you can't find one of us, head over to the registration desk and we'll help you out there. That's my last item except for the giveaway. If you didn't know about the giveaway, we did a little competition to try to get some social engagement mustered up to get the word out about vNext. If you didn't know about the giveaway, I apologize for whatever the rock is that you were hiding under, but I would try to be as loud as I could about it. So to those that participated, thank you for getting out there, spreading the word. We do have a winner to announce. We do have the door prize for that is coming from one of our platinum sponsors, Poly. So if I can get our representative, Chuck, you coming on up? Awesome. And I've got these here. The competition was a...
Good question, Josh. So no, we've got a Poly P15, so the personal video bar that we're giving away, and a headset, our Voyager Focus 2. So you have
complete personal collab kit, right? So with that, thank you for the donation. And the winner of the competition ended up being Matt Slaga. So Matt, you take home the kit. We'll bring it down. Yes, it was a must-be present to win, definitely. We encourage participation regardless, but it was a must-be present to win. So, Matt, congratulations. Thanks for helping out with everything. And with that, I'm going to have Adam come up and introduce our keynote from across the pond. So,
all right, I'm not going to try to step up or down off of that because I know I will fall. So, and this is all being recorded. So first off, again, thank you so much. For those who haven't met me, I'm Adam Ball, and I have the honor and privilege of introducing a good friend, and I have just been super excited to have this happen. Tom Arbuthnot, if you don't know who he is, I'm going to go back to Josh's comment. You're probably hiding under a rock. Tom was probably one of the first people I started following back in like 2008, 9, something like that. And I have learned a ton from Tom over the years as I've grown in my abilities for Microsoft UC. Tom, I mean, I can distinctly remember back to where this Link Conference 2013 and meeting you there back at San Diego, which is where a lot of this comes back to, is community and everything like that. So really appreciate it. Tom, you've been able to launch, and I know you'll talk about this more, but please follow Empowering Cloud from Tom. If you want to know more about what's going on in the Microsoft UC and Microsoft Teams ecosystems, Tom is the person to follow. And with that, I'm going to ask Tom to come on up. Please give a hand for Tom Arbuthnot, all the way over from the UK.
Thanks, Adam. Thanks, mate. Cheers. Absolutely. How are we for audio levels? We okay? Yeah, sounds good. Cool. Well, that made me feel old. Thanks, Adam. So, hey, everybody. I really appreciate the opportunity to open this show. I love the community shows. I think with everything going on in the world, this is more important than ever. And I find there's so much value out of these focus shows in Europe, in the US, where we're all together to talk about the same things, look at the same technology. So with that in mind, when the guys asked me to open up, I thought, well, what are we actually going to talk about? What will add some value? So, and that got me thinking about, actually, funny enough, some of the whole from San Diego to where we are now and where we're actually going. So, as Adam said, I'm Tom Arbuthnot. I wear a few different hats. I work for an operator called Pure IP. I have my own organization, Empowering Cloud, which is all Teams training and advisory and community. Various badges, MVP, Masters, when that was a thing. That was a great time. But I guess the most important thing for you guys is I spend pretty much all day, every day, working with organizations around collaboration, teams, their rollout, their strategy. And I'm lucky enough to work with, customers from thousands of seats to literally hundreds of thousands of seats. So I get to see a real mix of what people are doing, what works, what doesn't work, and what's going on, not just in Europe, but around the world in terms of teams and collaboration. So before we get started, and I know quite a few faces in the audience, thought we'd do a little bit of interactivity. Promise, this is the only bit of interactivity we've got. So if everybody could stand up for a second, please. Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to talk about my journey to how we got here, but I wanted to talk about your journey to how you got here. So sit down if you're not using or involved in your role capacity anything around Microsoft Teams. I was wondering if somebody was going to do it. Like you're at the wrong conference, right? Okay. So Teams is interesting, right? Because people have come into Teams from different areas. So like Adam said, a lot of us have come in through the UC route. and we'll have a look at that. But some people have come in from collaboration, from other product areas. So who has also touched Skype for Business in some shape or form? We're still all up, okay, so nobody's sitting down yet. Okay. Anyone sitting down for Link? Yeah, so a few down now. Okay, but still the majority. OCS? yeah. I've only got half an hour, Jamie. R1 and R2 in the same banner. This is where I'd be sitting down. I started at OCS R2, which I'll talk about in a second. Back to LCS. Okay, so we've got a few people who have real heritage in this space. Right, thank you guys, you can sit down. So that gives you a feel for who's here at this show. Like, there is some real heritage in the people here. And bear that in mind when you're spending time at this show. It's not just about the speakers. In fact, I'd argue a lot of the speakers will say it's not about the speakers at all. It's about the attendees and everybody just as much. So there's a lot of history and a lot of heritage. So that was the people's journey in the room. My journey began with what might be considered a swear word by some, Cisco Call Manager. So I was actually a Cisco partner, one of the original partners that launched Call Manager in the UK. And I grew up through that world. So I was not Microsoft native person. I was Cisco and networks and CCNA and all that kind of good stuff. And in that world, way back, at first it was Exchange Unified Messaging. So our customers were like, hey, we want to use Exchange Unified Messaging with Call Manager. So I was silly enough to put my hand up, like, that doesn't sound that hard, let's give it a go. So I started doing a bit of that. Then it was OCS R2 was floating about, and it was integration. It was remote call control. If anybody remembers the fun that was that, where you could control on-hook, off-hook, and we thought that was magic at the time. And that was where I came into this world. And I switched over to working for a Microsoft partner just before Link 2010. So I actually got to roll out the RC of Link 2010, a pretty big customer. And again, for those that can remember, we used to get ISOs with releases and waves and RCs. And so that was where I came into this world. And it was a really exciting world to be in, because people thought this was magic. Like, you know, you would be able to turn up and give them the ability to chat and do video, and they could work from home, and they didn't need a VPN, and they could, you know, you were really, you know, changing what organizations were doing. And we were really pushing the limits on Link. So getting SBC set up, obviously fairly standard stuff, like having endless debates with telephony teams about putting your session border controller in front of the PBX or behind the PBX, and who's in charge, and can you trust these session border controllers, and all that kind of fun. But we got into some pretty interesting things. So I did a deployment of Link 2010 for a county fire organization in the UK, fire stations. So we would try and set up analog ATAs that ran the fire bells. You know, the fire station were using like instant messaging for dispatch and stuff. And this is like, suddenly you're like, this is pretty important. We better get this right. So that was kind of the early days. And I'm sure like a lot of people in the room, you know, that went through the same kind of journey, you know, had the home lab with all the phones and home IPs and session border controllers, integrating to PA systems, door access systems, doing call recording when it was very early and there was no such thing as certification. That was a fun time. And then got through to Skype for Business and all those kind of technical things. But the real journey was the community and the collaboration. And even when I was back at the Cisco partner, there are some people in the room that I was talking to on Twitter about, you know, how do we make this RC thing work, and what are you doing, what am I doing? And one of the things that was great about the Microsoft community, within Cisco world at the time, it was very like, I'm an expert, I have all my config files in Notepad text files, and I hold them to myself. And in the Microsoft world, it was very, look, I'll share everything and anything, we're all going to learn together. And that really sucked me in. So it was Twitter, TechNet forums, the conferences. So San Diego was an instrumental one. I see Jamie there. LinkConf in Vegas as well. And then the really big ones, the Ignites and Tech Eds. But really, I think calling it back to this event and Comsverse, vNext, the community events as well, the user groups, that was such a big part of my journey. And I think that's something that lives on just as strongly today. So we kind of went through that journey, and it was lots of servers and VMs and session border controllers and hardware load balancers and plugging stuff in. And then Teams came along. And it was kind of a whole new world for a lot of us. Not only because it's a cloud service, so you're doing less plugging in and IP addressing and all that kind of stuff, but also because it brought together the collaboration world with the communications world. And I'm not going to go through all the numbers, right? We've seen everybody here is in the team space, so we know how much it blew up. And obviously, world events had a big implication on that. But the numbers are pretty staggering in the timeframes. And what's even more interesting to me is working with lots of different organizations, you can see that the adoption is very different in different organizations. So some are all in 100% Teams phone, lots and lots are still on the meetings to phone journey. Some have gone very collaboration first, some have gone very voice first, and they're not doing a lot of the collaboration yet. And I guess Rooms is worth a call out as well. Like Teams Rooms, it just seems to be on everybody's lips at the moment because of hybrid working, because of new ways of working. Like pretty much every organization I'm working with has some kind of strategy, some kind of timeline to get their room set up as well. And I guess on a personal note, for the first time ever, people actually understood what I did, vaguely. So I spent, like the first 10 years of my career being like, Skype for business, like that, like Skype, but for business. I'd be like, well, then what do you do? Because you just turn it on, right? No, our thing's harder than that thing. So Teams, it became, a word that everybody understood, that you can, people got what you were doing. So those are some big numbers, but is this the beginning of the journey? That's the question. And I think there's two ways to look at this. So first off, we're kind of 5 years in, give or take. This cloud communications market, we all live in it, so we tend to think everybody's in it, right? But the reality is it's still relatively young. There's, the analysts are saying 2026 is when cloud calling, like across all platforms, will overtake the traditional on-premises PBX calling. So even though it feels like we're all probably in customers or working with customers or in organizations that are doing this stuff, there's still lots and lots to be done. This really is early days. We're in the Link 2010, maybe Skype Business 2013 kind of days. Very practically speaking, if you look at the amount of licensed seats in Microsoft Teams, you've got 345 million, give or take, Office 365 E5 seats, 345 seats total, about 12% of them are E5. So you've got an amazing amount of organizations out there that are already licensed for a lot of this stuff, but are still on the journey of enabling it. You've obviously got loads of growth in the Teams room space as well. So I think if we look at the next 12 months, I would argue we're still at the early stage of that growth phase, certainly for organizations making the most of Microsoft Teams, for really not just we've got it, but we're using all the features. We're actually fully maximizing it. We're using Teams Phone, we're using PSTN. But that's looking at it very kind of, next 12 months practically. I think if we stretch our vision out a little bit, really the big shift we've had is Teams is a giant cloud service that's constantly evolving, that has the power of the cloud behind it. So actually what we call Microsoft Teams now is very different to what launched as Microsoft Teams and what we're talking about in 3 years, assuming we don't get a rebrand, which never a guarantee in Microsoft. We'll be talking about something very different that's Microsoft Teams. So here's 3 areas I think that are going to be really impactful for us in the future. So first off, apps, low code, no code, workflows. The organizations I work with, and I'd love to chat about this afterwards if anybody's got any other experience, I'd say by and large, they're more advanced in, they've got meetings deployed, right? That was a massive win, and they're all using that. They're using calling or VoIP fairly often. the level of collaboration and apps and using channels and really working together, it's still pockets in the organization. You know, the development team have really latched onto it, or the marketing team have really latched onto it, or a business unit have really latched onto it. But I think this is really one of the team's superpowers, is bringing together workflows, apps, the new collaborative apps experience where we can have apps in our meetings, and also flipping on its head, looking at the APIs and Azure Communication Services and bringing those abilities into apps as well. I think when we look back in a few years, we'll be like, oh, we weren't really maximizing what teams could do. Yeah, we jumped on and did a meeting, but now we're doing our work through Teams, our workflow through Teams, our third-party and first-party apps are living in Teams. And I would call out here Power Platform. Like the recent financials were 25 million Power Platform users. Again, that's a relatively small number compared to the whole of Office 365, but there's so much power, to use the right name in there. And I think about the way Excel's used today. Really, in a lot of organizations, Excel and macros and stuff kind of runs the organization. Those kind of advanced people will be coming to Power Platform and building apps and integrations and workflows into Teams, and that will really separate what Teams does for organizations. Number 2, AI and machine learning. And this is just a fascinating area. I dug into this a bit for the keynote. Now, obviously, we've got AI and machine learning in Teams today in various ways. So things like the intelligent camera framing, some of the audio optimization, video optimization, even things like if you've seen some of the suggested replies. All of that stuff is using AI machine learning. You've got the new intelligent speakers, or intelligent microphones, as Michael would call them if he's in the room. The ability to recognize voices, to do transcription, to associate voices with certain people so we can see who was talking and when they were talking. That is all pretty impressive stuff, but I think we'll come to see that as being fairly basic compared to where we're going. So the promise of AI is pretty amazing beyond just Teams and collaboration. The whole thing is just fairly insane to get your head around. But I don't know if you've seen some of the DALL-E 2 stuff and some of the content creation stuff and some of the things that are being done in AI. You can see there's not a too distant a future where we're using AI to do things like understand who's engaged in the meeting, like are people getting value out of this engagement? Are we working the best way we can be? Meaningful meeting summaries are something I'm really excited about. Just less meetings I'm really excited about, to be honest. But you can imagine being able to take meetings, recordings, and for AI to actually be able to summarize, it's got the screen share, it's got the screenshots, it's got the text, it knows who spoke, what are the key points of that meeting? Why can I not jump into Teams and get a really accurate, concise meeting summary? And some of this stuff, if you pay attention to what's going on, some of this stuff is starting to come through now. But I think we'll get to a point where that's a way of working. I can either go to a meeting or I can not, and I will catch up, and I'll know who got the actions, what went on, who was there, who wasn't, in a really nice packaged up summary. And if you expand that out, the amount of time we all spend collaborating across chats, one-to-one calls, meetings, imagine if you could unlock all that knowledge and all that data to know who are the subject experts in your organization, who's talking to who about what's going on with the projects, and then you expand out again to working with your customers or your partner organizations. Like imagine you think about what's going on in the kind of CRM and contact center world. Like what if I could summarize all the engagement that's happened between my organization and Microsoft, and who's doing what and what's going on with who, and how do I pick up with those conversations? I think we'll come to see the level of AI we can get out of the cloud will really start to change the way we actually work and really unlock some of that knowledge. So I'm really excited about that. If you're into this area, it's worth keeping an eye on what's going on with the Nuance stuff, the recent acquisition from Microsoft. A lot of that story is aimed at a contact center CX audience, but look at what's being done there and start translating to how some of that power could come back to our use of Teams and collaboration as well. And last but not least, Metaverse. I know someone's going to go, really? Metaverse? Are you sure? This is a divisive one. You know, some people are all in on it, and some people really think it's going to be a big thing, and some people are a little bit cynical of is this going to be the next thing? And this is what it reminds me of. I think, you know, if you can go back in time, you know, this is a bit before my time, thankfully, some of it. But like when, you know, we had mobile phones and suitcase batteries even before these kind of mobile phones, there was, you know, is everybody really going to have that? That's a specialist use case. You know, the technology's, you know, a bit clunky at the moment. Like, is it worth it? I feel like where we are with VR and AR, we're maybe a little bit further on than that, but we're still at that phase where we're like, yeah, but it's not quite there yet. But just like all technology, it will roll on. It will get slicker, it will get faster, it will get more cost efficient. And another comparison I make that I think is really interesting is I get to work with some pretty big organizations, and every now and again I catch myself, and like our conversations are like Giphies and emojis and casual chat, and I'm like, I'm talking to a bank. Like, I can't imagine like 5-7 years ago that I would be sending Giphies to a customer in an organization I work with in a bank. So styles of communication change as well. So in the metaverse, kind of, you know, it's a bit of a catch-all kind of word for some of these futures. But I think at the very basic level, you've got the idea of having avatars, bringing more engagement to people who don't or can't or won't do video. Again, basic to start off with, but you can clearly see a point where the technology we see in other platforms of cameras, movement sensors, that kind of thing, giving some real decent engagement of who's paying attention to the meeting, who's engaged, what are their reactions, where I don't or can't do video for whatever reason. Take that a step further, and you've got the idea of mesh meetings and meeting together in a virtual reality scenario, bringing in assets into that virtual reality, so working on presentations, whiteboards, trying to get that feeling of being collaboratively together in a space. And I think this will be one of the longer tail scenarios because you've got to get everybody into the headsets and into the engagement. But you see there are organizations out there doing this stuff today, and there's definitely interest in, with hybrid working, how do we bring some of that sense of togetherness back together, that full engagement of being in the room, as best we can with technology. And then there's the whole AR, VR mixed reality. And I think this is the one that's very real today, being used in lots of organizations. And I think this is the one that most people can latch onto as there's clear value here. You know, the idea of doctors and nurses and medical professionals training with AR headsets, being able to walk around models in 3 directions, being able to 3 dimensions, being able to overlay plans onto physical objects. And you think about in industry, manufacturing, car design, anything that requires multiple people to engage with designs and models, I think it's very easy to see that there's value there. And then you've got the idea of kind of taking that further, of bringing multiple people together, so the holographic element and the real world element all together, all overlaid. Again, if this feels a bit out there to you, it's worth having a look around at some of the videos of what some organizations are doing today. And some of it is like just training scenarios where they're teaching you how to do, I think it was Toyota were doing car parts building, like so you'd put on and practice how the car parts came together, that kind of thing. There's very, very practical use cases to this. I think it's very easy to see how this ties into our collaboration world. So I hope that's given you some kind of inspiration for the next couple of days. Like we're all super busy in this space. Like clearly Teams is exploding. It's all very exciting. And in the immediate term, yes, we're all going to be doing probably more rooms and more Teams phones, and absolutely that's a thing. But think forward to how things like apps and workflows, AI, VR, Metaverse, we're all working with a platform that is going to continue to, literally change the way people work on the scale of hundreds of millions of people. And if we look backwards at where we came from the people that were stood up with the kind of, LCS, OCS those days, and where we are now, that's A, seems like a lifetime, it pretty much is, but B, the technology change is pretty fascinating. And that was server products incrementally going forward. The cloud is a whole different ballgame. Things are changing all the time. Things are advancing all the time. We all inherit all the benefits. So go out to the conference and remember, this is really only the beginning. I really enjoy being together in person. Like, there's a real good opportunity to talk to people here. And not just the speakers, like, make networks. If you're here for the first time, if you're new to this space, I promise you, everybody is here to talk to each other and have fun. Just jump in, have a chat, get to know people. Because as Adam said, some of those back in 2013, some of those kind of San Diego link-conf relationships, I mean, most of them still live on in this room. So get in the mix with this community, say hello to everybody. By all means, come and grab me and have a conversation. And enjoy the show. Thank you very, very much. Appreciate it.